Well, hello there. Welcome to this Friday Social Live. What is the psychic law of synchronicity? If I say the word synchronicity, what comes up for you? What ideas do you have about this? What experiences can you look back on in your life and kind of reflect and go, that felt like synchronicity. I think that was a synchronicity. What I want to offer you is that whatever concepts you may have of synchronicity is far larger than that. Now, we could go into all sorts of different types of synchronicity. Maybe you've experienced just, that parking spot that happens to show up because you just said a prayer to something and there you go and it arrives. Or maybe you had a synchronicity that was an answer to another prayer. You said this prayer and immediately you got a sign. We talk a lot about synchronicity speaking to us through signs. Or maybe it's been something where you were thinking of somebody and just at that moment they called you. This is really pedestrian synchronicity. There's a far larger matrix of synchronicity that I want to introduce you to. But before we get into that and why you really, I think, would be very well served understanding this psychic law spherically, and that's the key, spherically, holographically. Why you'd be very served by that is because in my work, in what was really a study of synchronicity for the last 25, almost 30 years, both through my study of astrology as an intuitive tool, but also through my study of people, of you, of us, through the thousands of intuitive readings I've done. Every intuitive reading, in fact, I entered into someone's energy, their psyche, through this psychic law, in part. I entered into them through synchronicity. If I'm looking at an astrological birth chart, this is a map, a synchronistic map of someone's life blueprint. So what generates that? What generates the capacity to almost hack into the matrix and kind of see all the different dynamics in play in terms of co-creation, why events happen? Well, that's what synchronicity really becomes about. Now, Carl Jung, on whose shoulder I stand certainly, and I think almost everyone else does when it comes to speaking about this psychic law, who really was the first person to give it language, to identify it. The name synchronicity, the word comes from him, had a very, I think, profound idea around synchronicity. However, I think he became insular in his own model in a way that he couldn't see beyond a certain scope around this law. Now, what I've learned in my readings is that this law goes everywhere in many different ways. In fact, there's different types of synchronicity, but there are also different levels. Both are true. And what I've also learned is that synchronicity is a co-creative psychic law that you can actually consciously, intentionally activate. And when you do that, I call this in part the synchronicity of destiny. You do just that. You open up opportunities in your life. You open up so much into your field. Doors, signs become clear. Intuition becomes clear. Whether you zig or zag in a choice becomes clear if you know how to intentionally work with the psychic law of synchronicity. So welcome to the Social Life. This is where we're going to go for a little bit, and then I'm going to invite you to go further with me in a free webcast event that I'm doing next weekend, because I've got so much to say about this. There's no way I could cram it into one Social Live. Let me take a minute and say hi to everybody, get into the comments here, and I just want to make sure everything's going smoothly with the stream. One never really knows when it comes sometimes to these streams. I must be doing okay. It looks like you guys are. Hey, Linda, I appreciate your compliments. Thank you very much. Okay, let me just double check here. All right, that's me. Cool. All right. Well, I'm so glad you're all here. I mean, this is a subject I am bursting to talk about. It's something that this information's been in me and coalescing in me for over 2 decades through my professional work, and also just being a human being on the planet and living a life just like all of you, trying to find my own path of destiny, my own opportunities, my own timing, my own alignments. And that's where synchronicity becomes a fantastic tool, a fantastic force. And I have to say, that's really how I see it. I see it more as a force than anything. It's a force that moves the entire creative matrix of life. And I have to say, it has been grossly misinterpreted and misunderstood. We have a lot of fantasy around what synchronicity is. And sadly, because we hold into a certain fantasy about it, we really miss a whole nother arena of where it can be helpful to maximizing our optimal potential into the world, our next true choice for ourselves, etc. It is fantastic. I would say it's also an intuitive force. So we're going to dive in here just a minute. I just want to take a minute and say hi to everybody. All right. So we got Karen on, I see Karen on YouTube. Hey, Karen, how you doing? DM on YouTube. All right. Jean Stewart. Cecil Lim is back in the house. What's going on, Cecil? All right. Well, I'm glad you got Tammy Engel from Facebook. Great. So I'm streaming live on both Facebook and YouTube as usual. And that's where I do my live streams so far. I don't know. I might add something else in at some point, but this is my wheelhouse. So yes, I'm going to get rolling here. You guys ready? So while we're kind of settling in, I want you to really kind of conjure up for yourself whatever ideas you have around synchronicity. And nothing's right or wrong. It's just a matter of what comes up for you in terms of that word. What associations do you have? I mean, this is a word that is now in our dictionary, obviously, and in our lexicon. And I think a lot of us use it in different ways. So I want to begin with Carl Jung. And because we have to honor the king of the psyche here, and the person who really, I think, in our modern era, got very curious about this principle he began to see in his analysans, and the people he was working with in depth psychology, which was his forte, and really a field he pretty much pioneered. His understanding of synchronicity was that it was a causal, which means that something happens and something else happens in tandem, but there's no causal link to those two events, meaning they didn't cause each other. Rather, from Carl Jung's perspective, there's a link of meaning, So what I want to show you is that there is actually far more there's causality is far more involved in synchronicity than you might think. In fact, it's one of the driving forces of it. Now, there is a space where Carl Jung's idea of synchronicity being acausal is true, that something happens just in tandem, but there's no causal link. But it's also not true, because that's going to be true if you only see it from a few dimensional points of view. If you go multidimensional in perception and multisensory in perception, then you begin to see spherically causal links when it comes to synchronicity, far more than Carl Jung could, because he had modeled himself into a way of looking at the human psyche, which was really, truly brilliant. And I'm a Jungian at core. I mean, I've been a voracious student of his work, and anyone who's ever studied him, you could study him and his work your whole entire life, especially when it comes to archetypes. But what I discovered, and where I have to hold to the truths I've seen about this psychic force through intuitive readings, is that there is a sense of cause involved far more than we've ever been brought to believe. But we can't talk about causality beyond, let's say, this four-dimensional space and time that we're in, unless we go multi-D. And when you go multi-D, that's when you enter into different levels of consciousness, which also frame different levels of synchronicity and your capacity to see them. So we got some things to discuss here. I got to lay down some tracks, and then we'll go lay down some more tracks in my free webcast event, which I hope you'll join. I'll put a link up pretty quickly in the chat here for you to link to, and also put a link in the description of the video later. But let's begin with our current need to move beyond Carl Jung's idea and why. I think as part of our just human evolution here and moving into a more holistic way to live in our potential and express potential. And what I mean by holistic is this. I think we've often thought of destiny as actualizing the self, as becoming fully actualized in our potential, right? But that is a very myopic, narrow view of destiny. Once you bring the word service into and set it next to destiny, now we're beginning to go holistic and spherical. Because the truth, and I've seen this in all the readings I've ever done, is that destiny is connected inextricably Purpose is connected inextricably to service. Now, when you think about it, it does start to ding, ding, ding make sense, right? Like, hey, my fullest expression of self, of course, isn't just this narcissistic pursuit of who I am, and then that's end game. Rather, it's no, I go in to hug dragons and find treasure in me and, become an alchemist in my interior so that I can, yes, more be fully me. And in Carl Jung's language, this would be individuation. This would be becoming an actualized individual. Why? What's the guiding force of that? Just so you can pop up and say, hey, I'm me? No, we are required continually. By the way, destiny is a verb. It's never done. We are required continually to explore who we really are. And not only that, who we were, what we're under soul contract to become. We're all in that soup. But to get to end game, if you will, you've got to ask bigger questions like, well, and what will that do? Okay, I hug dragons. I individuate and differentiate out of my family history. I stop replicating all the self-sabotage that I inherited. I move beyond, let's say, patterns of addiction from the family psyche I grew up in, or patterns of neglect or abuse or abandonment. Okay, yeah, I'm in this continual journey of healing and becoming me. But as you move to greater consciousness and as you move to a more expanded understanding of destiny, service is going to pop right in your head. So when we hear, I want to find my calling, I'm looking for my calling, I'm trying to figure out what my calling is. I want you to think about that word calling. What's a calling? A calling is something that exists in your potential. Absolutely. If I were to read you intuitively, I would see it in your contract. I would see there's your calling. But what I would also see is that true to what a calling is, a calling calls you. You don't, with your ego mind, actually design the calling. There is an innate core, your soul, that already knows the code of the calling. And when you begin to get to that code, then suddenly other forces meet you. And what they use as their intermediary is the psychic law of synchronicity. So if you're looking for, well, what's my calling? What's my calling? Well, you have to go to, okay, I've got to understand that my calling is what in me, my unique code of light, is meant to serve in terms of the whole. It's bigger than the ego mind could ever conjure. Almost as a protection, because in our ego mind, we have the wounded human ego. All of us got that. No one's opted out of the wounded human ego. And every time I hear someone say, I've gotten past my ego, I think, oh, you know what? You're dead on in it. When you say that, only the ego wants to make that kind of comment. Like, I've gotten rid of my ego. Only the ego is going to say it got rid of itself. The soul's like, I've got this thing called the ego. It's part of the human journey. It's actually identity that I need to cultivate and understand so I can serve through that identity, my calling to the world. So this isn't about, and to be very clear, this is never about getting rid of any ego issue per se. It's around encompassing it with compassion, ventilating and healing what's going on with your wounded ego the best you can, and then letting the soul rise up more and more all the time at every new level in your life. Now, there's many facets of synchronicity that are in play in what I just said. I'm going to come back to some of those in a minute, but I want to finish this by saying, listen, a calling calls you. But here's the catch, and it calls you through synchronicity. That will be the way it will call you. So when I coming back to my original question, why should we care? And why do we need to move beyond Jung's, in my view, limited understanding of this psychic law? Because we're in a new era. We're in a new one world evolutionary mandate archetypally on planet Earth. And to be on the side of greater power, true greater power, the side of, if you will, light in this evolution, you have to start to cultivate spherical one world consciousness, which is to say that every single thing is dimensionally interrelated. All is one. Now, back to synchronicity. When we're looking at synchronicity and its function as a guide in our lives. Now, my whole end game here is to help you understand this difference between the synchronicity of fate and destiny. That's what we'll end on, and we'll continue that in my webcast event. But for now, I want to lay this down for you so you understand. End game for what I got planned for you is so that you understand in a multi-dimensional, multi-level way what synchronicity is and all that it can be that I've seen. And I would certainly say I'm not the final word on this psychic law, but I have a lot more to offer and add in. But I would also say I want you in intentional synchronicity versus unconscious synchronicity. And the reality is you probably live most of your life in unconscious synchronicity. Not only that, how do you know you're actually accurately interpreting your synchronicities? Because most people aren't. Most people don't even see their synchronicities. They don't see them at all. They're happening all the time, and they're not at a level of conscious awareness, intuitive conscious awareness to go, that's a synchronicity talking to me right now. And I would bet, in part, that's you. That there are synchronicities going on in your life. I want you to think of something. I want you to think of a time, and this might be right now. As I teach this, we're in a Mercury retrograde, so I think a lot of us are getting hit with like all sorts of, it's like being put in a blender right now, right? With what we think is true and where we think we're going and what we think is going to happen next. So I want you to think about, and this might be right now, a time where you just had a decision to make. You had a big decision to make, or a small one. But if you can find a big one, let's go with that. And you started to assess the karmic flowcharts of that decision. You started to think, well, if I choose this, it goes this way. If I choose this, it might go this way. What do I choose? And as soon as you say, what do I choose? I want you to know the psychic law of synchronicity goes, all right, I'm going to give you signs. I'm going to start talking to you. But here's the thing. It can't talk to you directly if you are only at a certain level of perspective, which most of us are most of the time. That level of perspective is this. I want change, but I want change on terms of the me now, even though the me now might be under contract to shed a skin. No, I'd like to keep the old skin and have the new. But co-creation and evolution, those laws don't work that way. They don't. So if you're in a shadow allegiance to wanting change on the terms of an old self that's shedding out and under contract to leave and shed out, and your prayer, if you get real with yourself, is I'd like the new on the terms of this person here. You know why? Because that over there is the unknown. And the unknown historically hasn't been too kind to me. What do I mean by that? I don't know about you, but I grew up in a pretty crazy home with two alcoholics. That might not be your story, but I know for me, the unknown was a bit of a shit show. I never knew day to day with two addict parents what was next. I knew it was going to be rough and tumble, and I knew that at times my life might be under threat, which it was. So for me, I had to work on making a different relationship as a spiritually mature adult with the unknown, because it wasn't a place of magic and miracles. It was a place of addiction, abuse. Who knew what rage would be coming up the next day? Now, you may have another version of this in your life where, yeah, Robert, I relate, man. The unknown for me hasn't been too kind. Maybe someone died suddenly in your life. Maybe you had an accident. Maybe you had something hit you and you lost your job. We oftentimes have to understand the laws of the human psyche that really are, intended to help us survive. And the jump we have to make to the spiritually mature psyche that says, I have to find a new way to, yes, I still got to survive. You do. But survival signposts cannot be my only guidance, because there's a higher realm of energetics and power that, in fact, can intervene and rearrange all this. So I've got to do a both and. And your gateway to both and here is synchronicity. A lot of the time, it's synchronicity. But whether you can actually interpret that correctly, let's do another example. If you're someone that has an enormous amount of shame, and we all got some of this because we live in a shame-based culture. It's part of the cultural pattern. We're being told every day in some way or other that we're not enough. And this is what you should do to get to enough. And that tends to be a filter, a shame filter, and through which we see life. And in fact, you might be seeing this whole thing I'm talking about through that filter right now. You might be thinking, I'm saying to you, hey, for you to be better and to finally arrive and be worthy of destiny, you better get down with the law of synchronicity and learn it. And that's actually not what I'm saying. You're enough right now. What I am saying is, if you want other options, karmic options, in the living out of your fullest potential in this life and being in alignment to receiving the call, I've got some tools for you. And this is technically, not worthily, it's not about worth, but technically, what will be required of you. You will need to understand in the largest way possible, because that's where you're at in your own growth and evolution, or you would not be watching me right now. You wouldn't be, because synchronicity wouldn't have you here. It'd have you somewhere else. But in synchronicity, in alignment to your path, we're here today, and I'm giving you, hopefully, tools that you're going, okay, Ohado is going to teach me a whole new wheel, spherical understanding of this psychic law, so that I can be clear in my intuition, clear in my choices, and really be able to interpret the symbolic level of my life accurately, as well as the signs that synchronicity speaks through to me. This is something you have to cultivate. This is something that requires, first thing you got to do is you got to take a deep look at your shadow. So for us to understand how we get into synchronicity and how synchronicity speaks to us, we got to understand, okay, if I'm going to get to a masterful place where I can interpret and, where I'm headed, activate this psychic law of synchronicity, I'm going to have to first open this door called the shadow. I'm going to have to take a step in to understand my biases, my filters, my worldview, the limits of such. Where I'm too tribal to see as an individual, the tribe sees for me. The tribe interprets things for me. The tribe actually owns my synchronicities. This is shadow work. So I just want to put that on the map. And now I want to lean into what the synchronicity of fate is. And I think it's kind of interesting in synchronicity that I'm talking about this during a Mercury retrograde, because that's when we really do tend to encounter the synchronicity of fate, probably more than ever. And with the synchronicity of fate it's this. It's guidance showing up in events that are the 2x4 variety or the trickster variety. There is a form of synchronicity that I call the trickster shadow form, the trickster shadow synchronicity. And what that's about is you are not in a level of awareness with yourself and your shadow that allows for a direct dialogue with the next steps for your life, or the next, choices you need to make, or the next boundaries you need to set. Fill in the blank. if you, for example, let's riff this out through a really focused example. If you're someone that is incredibly empathic, you feel a lot of life. You feel people. You literally can feel the world. I call this being an empathic soul. Let's say you're an empathic soul. And one of the survival archetypes of adaptation from your upbringing in childhood that your subconscious recruited for you to survive, your family and now adulthood, is the people pleaser. So you feel people, and it's in this codependent empathic way, and then you can feel when they're not feeling good. You can feel when they don't even like you. You can feel when they are in a mood. And your default is to try to make them feel better. Whether that's you become someone else that you're not to make them feel better, or whether, and this is really common, it's just that you forsake your boundaries and become a blood donor. Oh, I see that you're over there, feeling bad. Do you want to take a little bit of my energy? Let me generate some positive energy, or let me manage you in your anger, or manage you in your sadness, or manage you in your narcissism, or manage you. That's what a people pleaser does. You go manage someone else so that they enter into some other different emotional state. And why do you do that? Because your child archetype fears that they might abandon you if they're not happy. They might break up with you. They might harm you. And this is so viscerally coded in to the subconscious and to your psyche that it's a reflex. There's no choice here. Now, what you're going to get yourself out of this pattern is the synchronicity of fate. So, and I'm pulling from real readings I've done on people. I did a reading on someone once, and I'm right in the pattern here. This was this client's pattern. So a people pleaser to the extent that her synchronicity of fate, and this might not be true, I think we get what we need, but her synchronicity of fate was cancer. She got cancer. Now, I'm not saying that her people-pleasing pattern that was off the charts and just completely rogue caused her cancer. That's not exactly accurate. What did happen was that the way her mechanics worked, the way her contract intervened, was to give her a health issue so that she would be so depleted by her own need to survive that she couldn't people please anymore. And you know what happened to her? All the people in her life that she could no longer serve through people pleasing resented her for having cancer. Her own children resented her for having cancer. And that's when she came to me for a reading. She's like, I need to understand the mechanics of what's in play. And this is not to say that everyone that gets cancer, this is why. That is that's crap. This is to say, in this particular case, this was her truth. And that her synchronicity of fate was a cancer experience that forced her into herself to contain her energy, or she would die. Now, it's a very extreme example, but it lands you in, I think, how synchronicity will speak to you. Through fate, as what we maybe would call a wake-up call or a kind of divine intervention of sorts. This is real, and I would have you reflect on your life right now. What synchronicities of fate can you reference from your past or right now? This force of synchronicity has been a companion of yours your whole entire life. Maybe it's, moving out of a more severe example here. Maybe it's more, hey, I did get that synchronicity of fate, through someone cheating on me because I wasn't being true to me. So someone else went and acted out my own betrayal. And this is where it gets real rough and tumble, because to get past a synchronicity of fate, my client who had cancer, had to be willing to say to her children, and anyone else in her life attached to the people-pleasing pattern that had literally, think about this, created almost every aspect of her life. There was no situation. Her marriage was based on this people pleaser. Her relationship with her children was based on this people pleaser. Her relationship with her boss and her job, it had created the energetics of everything for her relationally. And for her to get into something else, because it was such a massive force, for her it took a cancer experience. And this is where we start to reference, you've heard this, I'm sure, before. The universe gives you a pat on the shoulder. And then if you ignore that, it kind of whispers in your ear. And then if you ignore that, it kind of like gets a little bit in front of your face, tries to get your attention. But if you ignore that, eventually you end up getting like that smack by the 2x4, right? Or you hit that rock bottom, or you hit a really rough bottom. This is all in the arena of synchronicity. And this is an unconscious sort of dialogue with this force. This is this force saying, you will not own and are not at a certain level of awareness and empowerment to hear me any other way. If I whisper in your ear, put your kids in check and divorce this husband because this is all based around a people pleaser pattern, you think you're going to just go, okay, sure, done. Could you do that? And it's not right or wrong. There's nothing right or wrong in our human journey. As far as I'm concerned, it's all about experiences and learning. We learn whatever consequences and karma we experience and whatever synchronicities we engage. What I'm after here, though, is that there are other ways to work with this law. And I'm just giving you one level of it. As mentioned, remember, there's many levels. This is a level that I think we all share in common. We have a synchronicity of fate. We have this. The only way we're going to hear guidance is the hard way. Our sabotage team is way too strong in us to hear it any other way. And I would have to say, humanizing this a little bit, I think we all have some area of this in our life where we're going to get a synchronicity of fate. It's just the technical mechanics of it. And what's also true is there is another path to follow with synchronicity. And I call this the synchronicity of destiny. So when you're in synchronicities of fate, and this is layer one, you're going to experience things that usually are a little harsh, things that align. It's a synchronicity. Things are aligning for you, but in a way that stops you in your tracks and sometimes gets you on your knees. So let's go back to my client example. Once she got past that people pleaser, and I gave her that reading, and I gave her the coordinates of what she could do next, and she did do it, and she did recover from her cancer. It did not kill her. She had to reinvent through a new archetype in her, a whole new life. But guess what happened when that new archetype came online? She opened up to different levels and types of synchronicity. What kind? This kind. The kind that says, okay, I'm done with this marriage. I'm ready to move on. And I'm willing to take on this journey of my spiritual maturity and my adult empowerment and let other new creative archetypal forces in me emerge. So let's see. I need a house. Boom. Synchronicity of destiny lined it up immediately. Boom. Easy peasy. Right into a new home. And not only a new home, a new community. So when you get into the synchronicity of destiny, after tending to your synchronicities of fate, what begins to happen is these are the alignments where a door opens on your best day you couldn't have opened. You didn't even know it was there. But heaven, if you will, the energetic realm opened it for you. That is also synchronicity. And synchronicities of destiny are and what falls underneath that umbrella are intentional synchronicities. And working with intentional synchronicity, you actually step into your co-creator role with conscious awareness, shadow work in check, and you go, you know what? I'm ready to take on this life. I'm ready to max out the potential of my soul contract. I'm ready for magic. I'm ready for doors to open, things to align. And here's the thing. It is and isn't your power in play. Now, this is where I got to take a little sidebar and talk about synchronicity and fantasy. We have in our culture created fantasies around this idea of synchronicity without understanding its technical dynamics. So, for example, what is very popular in a lot of areas is something called the law of attraction philosophy, which is just one element of the psychic law claimed as the whole and misclaimed, might I add. That is absolutely not the truth. The law of attraction, let me just give you a little teaser there, and I'm going to talk about this in my webcast a bit in depth. But if you really believe that there is one law called the law of attraction that is coordinating everything and like only attracts like, then you've cut out half of reality. Because you know what else happens through the law of attraction? Opposites attract. And you have to step back and go, why do opposites attract and why does like attract like? What's in play there? Now, I'm not going to cover that right now. I just want to put that on the radar for you because I will cover it in my webcast event. But that's just to give you an example of how we will fantasize. And what in us wants the fantasy? That's the deeper question. What in us, and I call this the bypass. And I'll tell you, bypass books will forever be bestsellers. And I'm not making that wrong. Who doesn't want a quick, easy fix with no work? Who doesn't want that? I mean, I do. So, we all want that. But co-creation doesn't play that way. And especially in this gritty earth school. Now, that said, there are so many other elements and laws in play in our creative process that you got to understand a little more spherically and more dimensionally to get into intentional synchronicity. You can't get into intentional synchronicity without understanding what pulses through this matrix of creation we live in, how it is itself dimensionally organized. So in my webcast event, I will teach you about dimensional organization. But for now, I want to stay on track with this understanding of getting to the synchronicity of destiny. It requires that you do some shadow inventory in yourself. And as you become more adept at a shadow process, which is something that I think becomes a spiritual practice, I don't think you're ever done with your shadow. And it's something that we have also misconstrued as only being this repository of negative things we shove away. It's far more than that. It's where our treasure is. It's where our miracles are. It's where our soul speaks to us and is trying to get through. So there's so much more that is so full of light, paradoxically, in the shadow. Yeah, you're going to meet some fire-breathing dragons probably when you first open that door and start taking a peek down into your own personal Hades. And then you're going to realize your personal Hades is connected to a collective Hades. And there's collective dragons you got to hug too. But the wealth and treasure that comes out of that makes it more than worth it. And a lot of times synchronicity, especially through fate, is trying to speak to you to get into that territory of yourself. So for example, so synchronicity also operates in cycles. You have cycles of synchronicity. And this is where the tool of astrology for me was a brilliant way to understand, offered me a brilliant way to understand this in people. You are actually scheduled for, and this is something you cannot negotiate with your ego mind. This is bigger than that. It's soul contract level. It's matrix of the earth itself level. It is evolutionary archetypal cycles moving through co-creation here on earth that are the earth's part of the earth's process level. You're in the matrix, all right, but you're not commanding the cycles of the planets. You're not commanding the rising and setting of the sun or the orbit of the moon. None of us are. Correct me if I'm wrong. Similarly, there are archetypal cycles and forces you're also not commanding either. And if you don't understand them and align to the, if you will, energetic weather patterns and understand them, then synchronicity of fate will try to get you there. It'll say, look, you're not in alignment with the creative flow of the Earth's process, which is bigger than you. You're just a visitor. Now, you can either harness these energetics of the Earth's process and open yourself to synchronicities of destiny then, or you can fight it and make your ego mind somehow the center of consciousness, which it is never going to be, and pump it up. And then you just, what did you just sign up for? More synchronicities of fate. So synchronicities of fate, they're there actually on behalf of messages from your soul, messages from your shadow, and also really, truly, messages from your potential. They're there to say, hey, listen, you're not in alignment. Your perception is too narrow. Your blind sides are too blind for you to understand the real energetics and karmic forces in play right now. So we've got to line up some interventions here, and we're going to just, all right, synchronicity of fate, go. Now, the transition from the synchronicity of fate to the synchronicity of destiny, in which we enter into intentional synchronicity, is multifaceted. And I'm going to be doing a massive masterclass on it all. So the transition over requires many dynamics. Coming back to this, like you do need to understand your own personal cycles of synchronicity. And that could be something like me saying to you, listen, you just lost somebody. You're in a cycle of death and grief. That is your cycle of synchronicity right now. You are in a cycle in which you're being called to be with all that you're experiencing in a way, because this is what you signed up for. This is the experience in this moment your soul needs. This is what alignment looks like. Alignment doesn't look like I'm happy all the time. Life is nothing but growth and expansion. Life is also death. Life is also neutral. I'm in neutral now. I'm not in go. I'm not in, stop. I'm hanging. Do you know when you're in a neutral cycle? Do you know when you're in a go cycle? Sometimes we're in various cycles simultaneously based on the dimensions of our lives. And synchronicity is with you in every single layer, every single dimension, in every single moment in time. So when it comes to synchronicity, thinking of synchronicity only as an alignment that occurs, when you have attracted enough for whatever it is, to me, that's child's play. It doesn't even begin to put you in the seat of intentional synchronicity. You'll never get there. Not with that perspective, because you're not aware of all the other laws that synchronicity is expressing and then speaking to you through. So take a little drink here. How you guys doing? How's everybody doing? I'm going to queue up your new comments, regroup my thoughts here for a second. There's some, so I have got literally, can I just show you these? This is how many bullet points I've got on synchronicity, and I'm not done yet. Many of which will be covered in the webcast event that I'm doing. So let me put that link up for you right now. I'm going to put it up in the chat. Hey, Doug. Hey, Candace, Ilka. Nice to see you all. Fatima is here. I recognize a lot of people from my membership. And just to kind of let you know, my Your Intuitive Edge Premium membership, the doors open on the 16th. That's next week. And I will be doing a masterclass on synchronicity inside of that. So if you join, you can join me in that masterclass. And I'm talking huge, huge masterclass. More about that later. But here's the link to join me for the free webcast event that I'll be doing. It's on the 19th, Saturday the 19th. And you can go sign up right now. It's actually, if this posts correctly, it's ready to rock and ready to go. All right, so let me kind of just sense where I want to take you next in our journey together today. And all right, yes, I see the link. You can see right there. Just go sign up. It's free. It's free, but for a limited time. So make sure you sign up now. And I'll be going, and I'm going to be putting more of what I'm going to cover over there in copy. It's just not done yet. I've had some things happen in my life, some synchronicities happen in my life that I'm kind of put me behind. But I want you to think about how much of your life synchronicities are you actually perceiving? I want you to just sit with that and live in the question. It's not that you got to answer it for me. It's more just to consider, wow, I really might not be seeing synchronicity in my life. Now, let me, I talked about the synchronicity of fate. Let me offer a way that you can discern whether you're seeing a synchronicity. And let's talk about synchronicity versus happenstance versus coincidence and versus serendipity, because they are different. Every single one of those things is different. Now, Carl Jung's idea of synchronicity, let's just start with synchronicity, was that it was an acausal force, that it's two things happening in tandem, in parallel, if you will, with no causal link. I don't agree with that. And I'll explain why I don't agree with that in my live webcast event more in depth. But for now, I would say that there are causal links that you can only see intuitively, spherically. Oftentimes, there are many causal links. So, for example, if I say a prayer, and prayer and synchronicity are close friends. If you ask for guidance, for example, whether that's through prayer or just inside yourself, you say to whatever works for you, whether you feel like you talk to your set of guides, or whether you feel like you talk to a God, or whether you feel like you talk to other forces. I really don't care. It's all good with me. I do all of the above. But if you were to say, you're at a choice point, you're needing guidance, and you were to say a prayer or something, or some focused, intentional call for guidance, and then you, an hour later, have an animal show up that has a symbolic meaning to you, that lets you know the answer or part of the answer, or someone calls you, or you hear and you start talking and they say something that is for you. It was the part of the answer, or the answer to the guidance you were just looking for. Or you turn on the TV, or you turn on the radio, or you hear somehow something, a song that's literally the lyrics are speaking to the prayer you just, or guidance you just asked for. We've all had those experiences, have we not? Now, Jung would say, well, there's no cause involved. I don't believe that at all. I think there's an absolute causal dynamic in play. But I'm not limited to Jung's perspective of the human psyche, because I've done thousands of readings that blew my own perspective up. If you understand how dimensional organization works, if you understand how the matrix of co-creation works, then you begin to understand that, no, actually, there are lots of causal links in synchronicity, but you don't see them just in 4D. And to get to intentional synchronicity, to be able to actually work with the psychic law consciously and understand its dynamics, requires going multi-D. You cannot just stay in 4 dimensions of perception. And to get beyond 4 dimensions of perception, you don't get there without shadow work. But that's not all. You don't get there beyond without many more levels of interior archetypal mapping and understanding archetypal energetics. There exists a way to activate synchronicity like that. But let's go back to this example of asking for guidance. I want guidance in my life. I'm going to say this prayer. I'm going to write down this intention. I'm going to just put a Post-it note, up on my mirror. And it's a question, and you're trying to activate an answer. Here's what you got to know. You've got to know the part of you that's asking the question. And you've got to know whether that part of you would be actually even willing to hear the answer. So when I said to you just a minute ago, hey, How much synchronicity do you think you're able to perceive in your life? I'd follow that question up with, what part of you sees, period, reality? How much synchronicity do you think your codependent can see? How much synchronicity do you think that the part of you that's toxically tribal politically can see? How much synchronicity, and this is a great example. It's so alive right now. Do you think your conspiracy theorist can see? Let's dive into that for a minute because it's a great example to go into some other areas here. Not only do we want to kind of get curious about that question, but also now we can also ask this question, what does a conspiracy theorist actually see? That's true synchronicity versus a projection of the inner suspicion they have about things, or the big bad world out there that's full of dark organizations, and that creates a projected filter through which they interpret synchronicity. So this whole QAnon phenomena is exactly what I just said. Seeing what's a true synchronicity from the matrix versus a projection of group psychically viral thought and perception. Huge moment to really dive into this because it's so raw and real in our present, at least in the United States, present co-creative process. Now, what's the risk of misinterpreting synchronicities? What's the risk of projecting a filter onto synchronicity so that you can't actually see it or you misinterpret it altogether? It's very high. It's so high that we ended up with an insurrection at our capital that killed people. That's how high it goes, and further. So this law ain't playing, but to really understand your synchronicities, and here's what will come out of all of it. Let me just sum it all up. Misinterpretation or projection onto synchronicity will equal self-sabotage of the highest degree. It will not open doors for you through the energetics of greater forces and greater grids of power in this life. Rather, it'll close doors on you. It will take you down into fate so deep, you may not get back out. Now, I would imagine that is not something for you. You're struggling with that kind of deep sinking into the synchronicity of fate and that just karmic bottom of fate. But I say that so you understand other dimensions of this law, that you will misinterpret synchronicity because of how you see the world through tribal lenses, through toxic fear, through agenda. And this is this is the thing about being an intuitive, and that I think for me was one of the greatest gifts of the work I've done. And I will tell you, when I first began 25 years ago, 20 years ago in earnest, I wasn't as good. I got better and better and better over lots of practice and time. My skills sharpened. My sophistication of the information I could see in someone's field or psyche grew. It expanded so large that eventually, one reading with me, I could talk to you for 4 hours and still have more to say because I could see that much in you. But what part of me was actually doing the seeing? I learned over time to differentiate that soul seer self, which we all do have, and the wounded or ego mind self, which we also all do have, and feel the energetic difference between what would see what, such that I could switch off for the most part, the wounded ego mind self and just directly see you, my client, in a very neutral way. It was just information. It was just technical. So back to how do you know a synchronicity is actually speaking to you or you're projecting it? Let's dive into this for a little bit. When you're truly perceiving synchronicity in a direct, not shadow trickster way, but a direct, that's a message for me. That message most of the time will come outside of your current frames of reference about the choice, about the next step, about your life. What do I mean by this? I mean that a lot of times that message is going to say, listen, I can only tell you so much in this synchronistic alignment because you don't yet have the eyes to see more. But I'm inviting you to see more. So I'm going to give you enough to know and this is what you're going to do. You're going to feel something internal turn on. Now, stay with me. This is, let me be very clear that this is direct synchronistic perception. This is not shadow trickster. I'm going to cover that next. What will you feel? You're going to just feel this moment. Your soul is going to go, oh, I better pay attention. That's a message for me. Boom, I got to pay attention. And then once you're energetically connected and also sort of stopped in your tracks, and you go, that is, I just was asking for guidance on that, and there's this, and boom, I feel it, and okay, what does this mean? That's the next question we mostly tend to ask. What does this mean? Now that's an intuitive question. That's where you blow up into a dimension beyond your current reference points. Because this is what synchronicity does. It's a dimensional shifter. It seeks to take you from one dimension of perspective to another. Whether that's, I'm trying to find what is the optimal choice here. We usually frame that in our polarities, how we're programmed in this culture, is the right or wrong choice. I look for the true choice. The choice that's true in this moment for you. Not right or wrong. Get rid of that. Not useful. Never gets you to the real true choice anyway. So synchronicity goes, okay, I got you in your tracks, but I'm giving you a message from beyond your current understanding of the choice itself. Can you hang tight with me? I got more coming. For now, do this. Now let's get to toxic, shadow trickster synchronicity. If you are someone that gets into synchronicity in a hunt for it, so you say your prayer, and then next thing you know, you're looking in your environment, you're on the hunt for the synchronicity, you're on the hunt for the message. I'm going to tell you right now, stop. That's not how this works. You do not get into intentional synchronicity through your will. And that tells me you think your will's running this, and it ain't. You get into intentional synchronicity through intention. And intention and will are very different things. I'll talk more about that in my webcast event. But just know, if you go hunting for answers, you're going to get, what you will probably end up getting is some shadow trickster synchronistic stuff. Now that's one element I want to put out there. Now let's go to something like QAnon, something like where a conspiracy theorist begins to then see all these things and coordinate information in a way that actually isn't true. It's illusion, it's trickery, it's not an accurate message from the Matrix. How do we know that? How do we know that that's what's up? And when you see someone deeply in the conspiracy theorist archetype in the deepest shadow way, because let's be clear, there are real conspiracies. Those do exist. We have to name that. That's actually really true. But the shadow conspiracy theorist, there is an uncenteredness to them. There's a sense of being so shaky and triggerable. And they go on hunts for signs. They go on hunts for signs. So they wait for the next message from Q or whatever. Synchronicity doesn't work like that. What you're doing, if you're doing that, is you're looking for, and what the universe will generate is shadow, trickster, synchronicities. And what are those? They're synchronicities of fate. They're there to trip you up and finally, hopefully, crash you out into some kind of bottom where you go, wait a minute. And let me just be clear. We've all done this. Let's just move off the shadow conspiracy theorists. We've all done this as well, right? Where you go on a hunt for a sign, and what begins to happen is, I'll stay with the conspiracy theorists, and I'm going to back out of that and come to all of us in a certain way. What begins to happen is it compounds on itself. And this is where we enter into psychosis, delusion, illusion. And the only way out of that is your heart. Now, I want you to think about something. In all the people you maybe have in your life or you've seen, or maybe this is you, and I have all the compassion for everybody. I really do. I want you to ask yourself, because here's the difference. In a true synchronicity, if you're really in a rapport with this psychic law and it's speaking to you directly and you are listening, and you are listening in a way that allows communication to actually get through to you, your heart's here. Your heart's online. I have not seen the heart online for anyone who's following QAnon. I've never heard the heart in anything any of those people have said. Energetically, there is no heart energy in any of it. And that's my first sign that they're in a lot of shadow conspiracy and enveloped and collapsed down into shadow trickster synchronicity. Because there's no heart. There's no compassion. There's no kindness. When you're in a direct relationship with synchronicity, you're going to feel those soulful forces moving. Many times, maybe you relate to this, when I've had my own synchronicities, I'm in tears right away because I know that message was mine and my heart's there. And there's no mistaking it. And I'm not in my freaking head. If you're in your head about it and not in your heart, I would say take a step back. I don't think this is either a synchronicity or you're not in direct relationship with it yet. Let's work through this. So as I get further into this, because I got to wrap up shortly here, this territory, this is what we'll do. We'll work it out. We'll work it out so you understand synchronicity in so many other ways that it actually exists, pulses through, is in your life. I want to blow up the idea of causality for you spherically so you understand a spherical level, a multidimensional holographic level of causality as it relates to synchronicity. And I'll tell you, when I first started studying astrology, Carl Jung, his work in tandem, because when I was 19, I picked up these books and began my journey. That's, and I'm 49 now. It literally has been 30 years of studying this psychic law. I was really, for a long time, very much down with Carl Jung's whole understanding. It wasn't until I started doing intuitive readings and began to actually, over time, see the sphere of creation in a different way than he did, that I began to understand, wait, there are actual causal forces involved in synchronistic events. It's a both and. Now, what's happenstance, for example? It's not everything is a synchronicity for you. I could say, I'm going to riff around and kind of twirl around in your head for a minute. Let's say that if I said to you, hey, synchronicities are happening all the time, nonstop, 24/7. It's pulsing through the matrix of this creative place we call Earth School all the time. That could very well be true. But what's also true is not everything's a synchronicity for you. What might be a synchronistic alignment for someone else energetically, you look at and you're like, I feel nothing with that. That's just happenstance. And you're right. It's exactly all it is for you. It's just happenstance. It's just happening. You're looking at it. It's happening. There's no message there for you. Similarly, when we say co-occurrence, something happens and something else happens in co-occurrence. That's a little more complicated. We have to go into temporality with that. We have to go into dimensions with that and try to understand, is there a causal link? If not, what is co-occurrence? How does that relate to synchronicity? I want you to understand in any event that coincidence is real. It's just a coincidence. There's nothing else for it. It's just an alignment of creative forces that are moving through. It's not synchronicity. It's coincidence. What people that go on the hunt for synchronicity are looking for is meaning where there is none. Messages where there are none. Now, just to kind of foreshadow, and this gets me so excited because this is my lane. I mean, this whole thing is my lane. My whole work's been through this law, the psychic law of synchronicity, and still is. When I download courses, it's a synchronistic alignment that, comes in and starts to help me map out what I want to teach and what's coming through to teach. And that is absolutely connected to this law. But let's just briefly hint toward divination, oracular tools, intuitive tools. That is connected to intentional synchronicity. What is, casting the I Ching or runes or doing a tarot card spread? It's an intentional sitting down and saying to the matrix, I need a mapping of the energetics in play in my life right now. And whatever system you're working with, whatever intuitive tool, astrology, runes, tarot, any other oracle cards, there's so much out there now. That's exactly what you're doing. And even then, you might not interpret it correctly. And why would you not? Oh, I got you. I'm going into all this stuff. Master class means master class. Anyway, I'm going to just take a moment here. Guys, got any questions relative to what I just said? Any questions about the free webcast event? So the free webcast event I'm doing on this, I'm going to go further in all this stuff, is happening June 19th at 2 p.m. Mountain Daylight Savings Time. When you sign up, I use Crowdcast for this. It's free for a limited time. You can go there, sign up. It'll be about 2 hours. It's going to be badass. I'm just saying. I'm going to go through. So can I just read to you some of my list? Because I've been working hard on this for about 2 weeks. Anyway, so I'll be talking, just to let you know what I'm going to be talking about, both in the masterclass and this free webcast event. I'm going to be talking about how to neutralize and remove what blocks you from perceiving your synchronicities, help you perceive and identify your synchronicities by level and type. I'm going to help you correctly interpret the intuitive guidance of your synchronicities. I'm going to teach you the difference between the synchronicity of fate and the synchronicity of destiny, which we did a lot today, but there's even more. I'm going to teach you the difference between unconscious versus intentional synchronicity. And then I'm going to show you how to activate the power of life's hidden archetypal forces with intentional synchronicity. This goes into archetypes. There's a way you can work with art, and that's actually, I think, where it's at its most potent, truly. Blow your mind. I'm going to teach you how to work with time. Let me just put a little spice on this one. Is it possible that you might be able to speed up synchronicity in your life? Yeah, absolutely. Is it also possible that you maybe perhaps unconsciously or consciously slow it down? Yeah, that's true too. What determines speed when it comes to synchronicity? I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to teach you about that. Also, so we're going to look at how to work with time and understand what limits the speed of synchronicity in your life, what increases it, how to identify your cycles of synchronicity. We got to cover that. We got to talk about cultivating multidimensional perception to perceive new levels of personal synchronicity and how that works. And then I'm going to talk about, and those of you who've taken my You Can Do Magic course, you're going to love this segment. I'm going to talk about synchronicity and magic, activating archetypal forces and grids of power. We're going to talk about our cultural and tribal fantasies about synchronicity. We talked a little bit about that. And that is really, really relevant. You know, you can be held hostage to a tribal psyche. And it might not even be a toxic tribal psyche, it could just be a tribal psyche that regulates synchronicity for you personally. And how can you be in a tribe? Because, you know, we're fundamentally, I think, designed to be tribal, and I think that's can be a beautiful thing. How can you be tribal but not throttled when it comes to your personal synchronicities? I'm going to be talking about that. It's a whole new perspective. I'll talk about the role of intention within synchronicity. And this is huge. When have you tipped into a mental construct versus intuitive perception? When do you think you're seeing intuitively, but you're not? You're projecting a construct. You know, in my readings, I have an organizational way of getting information that's technical, that's structured. That's different than me taking a construct, something I've constructed in my mind about someone, or readings at all, or how intuition works, and projecting that into a reading. If I do that, I'm not going to read it clearly. I have to be neutral. Similarly, to accurately perceive a synchronicity, you cannot be hung up in a projection of mental constructs about what synchronicity even is, let alone what you think the synchronicity is saying to you. You have to perceive it. There has to be an energetics in play that are about intuitive perception, not mental construct projection. I got you on that one. That's a big ass thing to cover. Why the ego mind can't understand the greater matrix of reality and mistakes its role in co-creation. Can't wait to get to that one. Synchronicity as your gateway / guide to greater personal power, clear intuitive guidance, divine timing, and holism. I'll finish on that. And that's just, folks, I probably just read you 5 of them. I've got, 40 points here I'm going to cover. So listen, I want you to take what I've offered here and just let it move around in you. And hey, if I triggered you, great. I really encourage you in the best way you possibly can to use triggering as an ally. Triggering indicates that there's something in your shadow trying to become conscious. If that weren't true, you'd be neutral. You just be like, okay, he said that, I don't agree, I'm neutral. Or, and so that's a good reference point to go, oh, there's something in me that I should get curious about. Really, that's really the key, curiosity. I should get curious about this. Why do I feel put off, triggered? Why am I resisting maybe what Ohado's saying? You can scapegoat me, but you're not going to get the benefit. And that goes true. I think that's true for everybody that maybe triggers you. You can scapegoat them, but you don't get the benefit of the guidance behind the trigger. You don't get the invitation to go into yourself and give love to something that needs love, or hug a dragon that's standing in front of a treasure, or get called by your soul to some sort of love rebellion or mystical activism. So triggering is not fun. I mean, it never is. I can't stand it. I mean, who likes it? But man, is it useful. It can be so useful. So please come join me this next Saturday for this next thing that's coming up. So what I'll do next Friday for the social live, FYI, is I'm just going to take your questions. So if you have any questions about anything, this is a free-for-all Q&A. I promised you that a long time ago. I broke my shoulder. And I don't know if you guys know this story. My dog almost died. I've been through a lot in the past couple months. And it's been a pretty profound cycle of synchronicity, of fate. And I'll own it. But I do want to still do that Q&A for you that just takes on any of your questions. And I'm open to any and all questions. I will post, in fact, as soon as the system lets me, the event either both on YouTube and Facebook, and you can start posting your questions right away, and I'll look at them all as they come in. Anyway, any questions today? I'll just see if there's a few I can maybe grab. Okay, you didn't see a link. Let me put the link back in here, y'all. This is the link for the event, and I'll be sure I just put it out there for everybody. I'll also be sure to put that inside the description of the video on both on Facebook and YouTube, so that you can go right to it. It's free, so you can go get signed up right now. So Dr. Andrea, she's asking me about my own synchronicity of my ski accident. I had a ski accident where I broke my humerus. I'm not going to talk about that. That's very personal. But I appreciate your question. I just want to acknowledge that because, some things are just personal to me. I share a lot as it is as a teacher, probably more than most do. But there's also got to be space for me to be in my own process. But thank you. Any other questions, everybody? Let me just see if there's anything coming up here. Yes. So will the crowdcast be recorded? Mary asks. Let me just put that up on here because that's a great question in terms of the what's going on here. Yes, it will. So if you can't make it live, I know. Hey, we're in an on-demand world. I think the live experience is always the best. That's why when I teach classes, if it's a new class, I teach almost all the sessions live if I can. There's a certain electricity and energetics to live that I cannot get when I sit in a studio and just do it's completely different. So if you can't make it live, however, you can watch on demand. Let me see, for about a week, you can watch the free webcast event on demand. So just make sure that you don't forget, that you prioritize, getting to it and watching it, and you'll be good to go. Just watch it on demand at your own leisure. And if it somehow I always record things internally. So if the recording messes up, I'll just replace the recording. So there will be some on-demand version of this webcast event. And it's about intentional synchronicity and, really activating those hidden, archetypal forces and kind of me taking you into intentional synchronicity. So we'll begin, in a very structured way with me laying the land out for you when it comes to synchronicity and beginning to build into a masterclass understanding of it. So I think you guys are going to really, very much appreciate it. So yes, it will be recorded. Any other questions? All right, now I got to hide that. Okay. Any other questions, everybody? So Jenny, I'll take this question real quick. I think it's kind of fun and gives us a chance to kind of point toward where I'm going to go in the free webcast event and beyond. I feel like synchronicity is a coincidence orchestrated through divine intervention. Do you agree with that, or am I misunderstanding? Absolutely, that's part of it. Absolutely. But there is that exists, absolutely, and I'm going to talk about that. And there is also you generating a synchronicity through your intentionality. You being able to dimensionally activate through archetypes and other things, guidance, doors opening, alignments. And then the question becomes, okay, I can personally generate that. I can set karmic forces in motion somehow, which I'm going to teach you about. But both and here, you're also working in concert with the holism and greater matrix of creation that is life when you do that as well. So how does your intentionality meet that greater grid, that greater sphere, the sphere of creation? And how can you understand synchronicity in this both and way where it's yes, because what you can begin to do, this is what I want to teach you, is you can begin to get information from the greater grid of life, the greater holism, the greater matrix. And then that informs your decisions, your actions, your choices. When I did intuitive work for Fortune 500 companies, this is what I did for them. I read the field. Oh, you want to launch a product? Oh, you want to do a new Oprah Winfrey show? Oh, you want to do, okay, let me feel the field for you and see how the field is going to respond to that. And then based on that, you might make a different decision. That's where we're headed. Some similar vein is that. So, all right, I love that question. So you're not misunderstanding. It's a both and proposition, and it just requires masterclass to really get the lay of the land. It really does. There's so much in it. There's so much in it. No, the video will not be. So just to be clear, the free webcast event is not going to be on Facebook or YouTube. It is only going to be on Crowdcast. You do have to sign up there. It will not stream anywhere else. So that is where you have to go to participate. And I'll just drop that link in again. If you guys want to go and look at it and check it out, it's free. You just got to sign up. And then, you'll be in the system there. And that's where we're going to do that. Okay. All right, so folks, I'm gonna close it down. Thank you so much. I'm so excited about this new material. Honestly, I've very lightly taught about the subject, but I am positioning myself to teach it in a masterclass level for the first time ever. And I've got so many new perspectives and insights to share. I hope you'll join me for that free webcast event. Keep in mind, my membership doors are opening on the 16th. They're only open till the 30th of June. And you can go further into the subject in that, where I'm going to do a huge masterclass on synchronicity. More information about that will be coming. But just join me for the free webcast event. We're gonna go into some deeper territory for at least a couple hours, beyond and more depth than stuff we did today. All right. So much love for all of you, and just watch your synchronicities. Just watch your synchronicities and see kind of start playing with a lot of, the things I've put out here, and just see where it takes you. Be very curious. Get curious about it all, and open up a little bit more. And just know there's so much more to synchronicity than I think you've probably ever considered or conceived of. And I'm super excited to teach you all about it. I'll see you next time.